Radio, raising the profile of employee engagement and shining a light on good practice for people who believe there's a better way to work.
Good afternoon and welcome to Engage for Success radio show number 601, Escape the Overwhelm of Being Always On. Today we're going to be talking about achieving more with less. I'm Jo Dodds, your host for today. I'm an engagement consultant working within the Engage for Success core team. The Engage for Success movement is an inclusive movement committed to the idea that there is a better way to work by releasing more of the capability and potential of people at work. We spread the word about employee engagement and shine a light on good practice, inspiring people and workplaces to thrive. And we're widely supported across the UK, involving the public, private, and third sectors. If you go to engageforsuccess.org, you can use the link at the bottom of the page to join our newsletter list, and all our social media links are there too. My guest today is Peggy Sullivan, who's author of the book Beyond Business. Welcome, Peggy. Thanks for joining me.
You're quite welcome. Beyond Busyness.
Beyond, oh yes, it says Beyond Business on here. My VA has obviously copied it in wrong. You're right. I remember looking at the cover only a few minutes ago. Yes, Beyond Busyness. Sorry. So yeah, start by telling us a bit about you and what you do and where the book came from.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Peggy, and I am a busyness addict in recovery. There's always been too much to do and too little time until I had a wake-up call that I just couldn't escape. I came home from work exhausted and ravenous, so I grabbed a stale bag of pistachio nuts and I chomped them down. But instead, my cat started pawing at my leg, saying, "Mommy, feed me, feed me." So I threw some kibbles into his dish and I fell asleep on the couch. And here comes the wake up call. I wake up a couple of minutes later and my cat is throwing up pistachio nuts. I look down and I see I just ate cat food for dinner. That was quite the wake up call. And that was when I took a couple of steps back to understand this thing that I call time poverty. Too much to do, too little time.
That a bit of a wake up call. Is your cat okay? Would be my first question.
Cats aren't supposed to eat pistachio nuts. They
No.
can't. I love my son, but I adore my fur baby. Could
Yeah. So what happened then? You had that wake up call and realised that there was an issue. What happened after that?
Yeah, so I had the wake up call, and then I took a couple of steps back, and I started looking at my life. My husband of 18 years left me. He said I wasn't spending enough time with him, and I had a stress related heart attack. So during all of that, I started to look into this concept of busyness and whether it was making me more productive, healthy, happy, and what price tag it had on my life. Obviously, I was running around in a mindless haze without even realizing what I was doing. It cost me my career and my husband. And then there was that eating pet food for dinner. So when I started to research, what I discovered is that 95% of the population is over the top busy, wants to be less busy, but doesn't know how. So I was not alone. What I also learned is that we do this to ourselves. We self sabotage because 79% of the population overstuffs their schedule so much they don't have time to work. But here's a stat that gets me is 75% of people struggle with self-care. Things like getting a haircut, getting your teeth clean, getting a good night's sleep. Busyness is not setting us up for success. So that's when I took a step back and I said, there's got to be a better way for me and everybody else. And that's when I started to research the framework I now call the busy busting framework. It's about subtracting low value transactions. That's step number one. Step number two is about really capitalizing on the superpowers of happiness. We tend to think that happiness is the thing, a destination. I'm going to be happy when I get a job, when I get to the weekend. But happiness is really about the micro moments. And I wrote my first book about happiness. And what I learned is that when we are happy, our brain lights up like a Christmas tree and sends neurotransmitters to our body, basically giving us more energy, more ability to focus, to be positive, to have an uplifted mood, to fight off chronic disease. So I say, put happiness rituals into your day. Don't wait for it to come happen to you. So that's step number two. And step number three, probably the most important, is having a filter for your decisions. Time poverty is a $10 billion business, but 94% of people don't have time for what's important. Obviously, time management isn't working, but when you align your time with your values, which are very important to you, you don't end up at the end of the day wondering where the day went and why I didn't have time for what's important to me.
So those are your sort of, did you call them steps? Principles? Did you call them steps or principles?
It's a framework.
A framework,
It's
sorry, a
peak
framework. Okay.
performance framework.
Yeah. So that's the framework. So if somebody's listening to this and they're feeling overwhelmed and that they're far too busy and they need to do something different, how do they apply the framework? What are the sort of first things that they should do? How does it work?
The most important thing to do is to eliminate low value activities.
Mm-hmm.
Things I call busy traps. Maybe you're multitasking during your day, but multitasking takes 2.5 times longer and you make 50% more mistakes. Or maybe you're stuck in meetings for most of the day. 83% of people spend a third of their time in meetings, but only 30% are productive. We spend way too much time in meetings. So it's about finding these low value activities and eliminating them. The email rabbit hole. I coached somebody who led a department of 6,200 employees, and they were very communicative, maybe too much so. So, what this leader decided to do was to send out an email and to ask everybody to cut back on the number of emails they sent and only add an email if it added value or was on a need to know. He cut his email down 45%. What would you do with a couple of more hours in your day not spent on email? So there are a lot of busy traps, and it's about finding which ones you do and eliminating them.
So how does that work? When I talk to my partner and I say, well, you just need to do blah blah blah, he'll go, oh, okay then, like if it was that easy, I just do it. So if we're talking to people and saying, find those traps and then eliminate them, you can see that sometimes the pushback might be, well,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
that.
we're victims of habit, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, that's why I worked with an HR generalist and an industrial psychologist to better understand what are these low value habits that we get stuck on. And I learned there are
Mm-hmm.
21 of them. And when you start to look at the data, like multitasking takes 2.5 times longer, or if you give in to an interruption, it takes you 23 minutes to refocus. If you really want to be productive, you realize that these low value activities aren't serving us. Doom
Mm-hmm.
scrolling, not getting a good night's sleep, not nourishing your brain, all things that add up to low value activity.
Hmm. So if you're in an organization where there's a lot of meetings and you're sort of expected to, go to them, what would you say people should be doing?
Absolutely. I coached somebody yesterday through that exact problem. And she had a daily meeting with her department, and then with other departments she worked with multiple times a day, and then customer meetings. So she found that 78% of her day was filled in meetings. So I asked her to write down on a piece of paper what her prime responsibilities were, what was expected of her. And she wrote that down. And none of it had anything to do with meetings. Yes, it was good to be updated, but she needed to do her desk work, her individual work. And so she went to her boss and she said, "Hey, I spend 7 hours in meetings. I know this is what you hired me for. I need more time to do it. Can you advise me what meetings I can escape so I can spend more time on bottom line activities?" Her boss was happy to help.
Yes, yeah, I can see how that might be. When you put it into that sort of perspective, I either do the work that you hired me to do or go to the meeting. So in your book, you talk about energy management. Tell us a bit more about your thoughts on that.
Sure. Energy management is, in my mind, what I call healthcare. And when we think about healthcare, self care, we think about big things. I'm going to make a commitment. I'm going to go to the gym for an hour and a half. I'm going to start eating all home cooked meals. But in reality, self care is really about giving yourself micro moments. I coached a woman named Jennifer who had 3 kids, and it was the same situation every single day. She ended work at 5:30, picked them up at daycare, made dinner, and then did chores around the house and helped her kids with their homework. So I asked her what would happen if she took 5 minutes in the morning just to collect herself and think about her priorities. So she did that. And she said that worked great in the morning with all the hustle and bustle. But when she was going to work, it was bedlam. So what she decided to do was to have a 10-minute lunch. And what she found was her productivity went up when she ate and when she took a couple of minutes to regroup. What I
Hmm.
find with as little as 15 minutes a day, people can improve their energy levels, their focus levels, and their productivity. And not even only that, their mood, because energy isn't just about your physical, mental, emotional energy. It's about the mood you bring to each and every room.
Hmm. So let's think about this in the work environment and the concept of sort of engaging our own employees. What do you think managers need to be doing in order to help people to sort of get beyond that busyness?
Yeah, I think for most managers, they're just trying to keep their head above water. They're just trying to make goals and they're stuck in a lot of transactional activities. So they don't have real human connection going on. I coached a guy, Randy, who headed up a very large department and he was busy all the time. And one time he was in the conference room and he realized, you know what? I need help. So he called his whole department to come in. And they were working away into the evening when he realized there was a snowstorm out there. So he looked around and he told everybody there's a snow ban. What are we going to do? And what happened was that he just looked around the room and he noticed that his employees were pooped. They were tired. His relationships with them had become very transactional. So instead of spending the next 4 hours working on work, they just talked, got to know each other, learned more about how they can support each other. Within 6 months, employee engagement went up, and that department turned into a well oiled machine.
Mm. That sounds really simple, doesn't it? But really powerful.
It actually is. I think the thing about my framework is that it's meant to be simple. Life is
Mm-hmm.
hard and complex enough. We don't need complication. We need simplification. We need to focus on what's important. And I can't say enough about adding happiness rituals into your day. We just think that happiness is something that we have to work towards. But when you take a couple of moments to refresh and recharge, it's amazing what it does for your mood and your ability to focus.
So let's talk a bit about that. What are your happiness rituals? What do you suggest people should do?
Yeah, one of my favorite happiness rituals is eating a piece of Dove dark chocolate. I open it up, I smell it, I enjoy the aroma, I pop it in my mouth, I close my eyes, and just enjoy it. And it's like pushing the reset button. Other times it may be a dance party, or maybe it might be a hug with my fur baby, going for a 5-minute walk, something that's 3 or 4 minutes. And they work in the organization as well. I brought in happiness rituals to United Healthcare, and they were able to improve first call resolution by over 33% in 6 months just from adding little breaks in the day.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, isn't it? How breaks sometimes feel like hard to build in because you're so busy, but actually they make you much more productive after. So you also talk about values vibing. What does that mean?
Values vibing is about aligning what's important with your decision making. It's so hard in today's fast paced society to know the right thing to do at the right time for the right reason. But when we have a filter for our decisions and our actions, then it gets a whole lot easier. So I got very curious about what values bring about peak performance, health, and happiness. And what I learned is that there are 4 core values that when we have these in our lives, our life is richer. And they are energy, self care, we talked about that, human connection, we talked about that, growth. My father used to say, a day without learning something new is a lost opportunity. And I used to say, Dad, why do you say that? And he would say, when we learn new things, we build our resiliency muscle and we know we can do really hard things. And that's a tool and a value we can all use and lean into every day. And the fourth and final value that I discovered was key to quality of life is authenticity, making sure that you're true to yourself, but also making sure you listen and you lean into other perspectives.
So what does that mean? Tell me what that means on a sort of day-to-day basis for people. It's a sort of word that got bandied around a good few years ago, and then I think people got a bit cynical about. What does that mean to you? What does
Yeah,
that look like in practice?
walk into a meeting where you've got a lot of ideas and they're put down and nobody's listening. And it's about letting people talk. We have two ears and one mouth for a reason. And when we collaborate together, we can afford decisions that make things better. But we all like to be self-led. We all like to listen to ourselves talk. So we don't collaborate and we don't listen as much as we should.
And how do we make sure that we do more of that?
I know for me, when I walk into a room, I ask questions and I listen. And for me, it gives me power because I understand what's important to the person, how I can help them, what they need, what they want.
Mm-hmm. So when you're coaching somebody within an organization, what would the process be? What sort of order would you sort of talk to them about these sorts of principles, this framework?
About the framework, normally what I do is I have them take a survey I call the Busy Barometer, and it'll give me an idea of what low value activities are rampant in that particular culture. And we'll focus on a couple of those and try to eliminate them. Then we'll move on to a couple of happiness rituals within the organization to build teamwork, energy, and focus. And last but not least, employees feel as though they are not seen. They want to know that their values are seen. So, having value alignment, discussing your values, and bringing them down to the core essence of what's important and how it influences work and bottom line is critical in today's business climate where there is so much change. Focus on what's important.
So how do you sort of approach that on the basis that companies have values of their own and then individuals also have values? Do those need to totally align, and how do you approach both of them or either of them?
When I go into organizations, I usually ask them what their values are and they tell me. And then I tell them that I researched 12,000 individuals to understand what brings about peak performance, energy, happiness, focus, and I provide a framework for the four values we just discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, what happens is they take those on and they figure that those are going to be the future filter for their decisions. Did I connect with somebody today? Did I learn something new today? Did I focus today?
And so the process then, after you've identified those values, how do you then continue to work with them so that they do sort of get past that busyness issue? We've talked about like emails and meetings. What other sorts of things can people do?
Well, I think one of the biggest values is open communication. What I found is when executives or managers ask their teams, what do you need? What's not working? How can I help you? And they listen, they communicate with them, and they make a real effort to help them with those bottlenecks, things improve. Bottom line, things improve. And that's why listening and human connection is so important in the business place.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you talked about growth. What do you mean by that?
Well, growth is about learning something new on a regular basis. Let's face it, life is hard. It changes, it pivots. We have to do new and different things all the time. So, when growth is a core value, you're used to doing new and different things. And you have this confidence. I got this. I can do it.
Mm-hmm,
And you don't bend when things get tough.
mm-hmm. And I believe you're working on another book.
I've written two books, one on the
Okay.
neuroscience of happiness,
Mm-hmm.
one on beyond busyness, how to achieve more with less. And the third book I've just started writing is about values vibing and how time management is a $10 billion industry, but nobody's got time for what's important.
So, following on from listening to this podcast, what would you say for individuals and managers within organizations to sort of take next steps? You know, what should people be thinking about and doing from here?
Thank you for asking that. It's really quite as simple as the framework. I've spoke to thousands of people over the last couple of years, and on average, individuals and teams get 5 hours back each and every work week. I mean, think about it. You do the math, that's 260 hours a year, 6.5 work weeks. So eliminating low value activities, giving yourself a breath and a break, and stepping into happiness rituals, and knowing what's important and making decisions that are filtered through your values. Those are the three things. I stand by it. They work every time.
Thank you. And for people who want to find out more, I guess the suggestion would be to read your books.
Read my book. It's on Amazon.com, or you can go to my website, PeggySullivanSpeaker.com.
And am I right in thinking you did a TEDx talk? Was that last year?
I did. If you Google TEDx Walden Pond on YouTube, you will find it. It went viral. I got a couple of million views, so that was really fun.
And that was titled Eliminating Time Poverty by Doing Less.
Right. It was about eliminating time poverty, which is really moving from time poverty, not enough time, to time wealth, having enough time for the things that are important.
Lovely. Thank you. It's been really interesting talking to you today, Peggy. Thanks for your time.
You're quite welcome.
And just to let listeners know that Andy Gorham will be back next week talking with Erica Vassar, who's founder of Prosper, and they're talking about employee retention strategies.
Engage for Success Radio, raising the profile of employee engagement and shining a light on good practice for people who believe there's a better way to work.